Good news, everybody. You're Pexin with the Legends. We are your hosts from the Gamer editing team. My name is Eric, and I have a real microphone now.
Woohoo! I'm Whitney, and you can call me Lumbago, and I am happy to be here. Just checking out my stats. I have like 230 something kills with Loba, which makes me a top 10,000 Loba. How
Oh,
many people do you think are playing
Ooh,
Loba?
oh my.
10,000?
got to be the top percentile. And I'm Andrew. I also go by Finn, Phin, and get the gold res shield out of Apex. Am I right, everyone?
Well, let's talk about it.
Oh.
So, we are now in week 4 of season 5. We have our third hunt, the Enter the Revenants, this week. So let's start by talking about that because it's fresh on all our minds. We all just played it, and I'm pretty confused about some things. I'm just confused about some things that happen in the hunt itself and in the lore afterwards. So I wanted to kind of get your guys' take on it because it isn't exactly going where I thought it was or what I expected. So last week we had a bit of a cliffhanger with Revenant showing up at Mirage's bar while they were all talking about what the plan was going to be moving forward, if they were all still on board. Watson has been injured, and while they're all sort of debating if helping Loba is still a good idea, Revenant showed up, revealing that he knows what they're doing. Right. Then we jumped right into the hunt, and this time it's all around water treatment and the bases outside of it, and we start out in this sort of like shadow demon form. Right?
Mhm.
That was pretty surprising to me, Whitney? What did you think of that?
I mean, it was fun. That was a mechanic that we saw in the sort of Halloween event that they did last year when they first introduced us to who this Revenant was. It kind of is like also more of a testament to the fact that we are in this sort of other world. And not that this can't happen in the world that we live in now, but just because it's like a Revenant thing and these quests we sort of already understand take place in this other dimension, this alternate dimension that like is sort of run by Revenant. So I think it was a cool, interesting way to tie that in, but I, for the life of me, could not remember that I needed to melee the doors down instead of open
Yeah, yeah,
them.
yeah. When Andrew and I just played it earlier today, you're supposed to destroy the 8 totems to move on. That's sort of the first objective. And I think he and I spent several minutes just kicking all the doors down.
Yeah, it's too fun when you have all that power. It's like, all right, let me just find all the nearest doors and destroy them. I actually had to go back to destroy that first totem because you drop right in front of it, and then I was like, oh, we're actually supposed to destroy these.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The way that you move around and climb when you're in that shadow form is a lot of fun. You're very fast, you climb very fast, you can jump far, but they put you in such a low profile with short buildings, and I feel like I needed something like in World's Edge where I could climb to the top of a skyscraper really fast or something to really feel that power.
yeah,
Uh,
scuttle up to the rooftops and
yeah.
dominate those prowler creatures. There was a lot of them this time around too.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
seemed like there was a lot more prowlers. But I liked that it was unexpected and something different than last week, even if sort of the flow of it was exactly the same. You do one objective, you go and plant the artifact recovery digger device, and then you escape on the ship.
I don't want to brag, but I chose caustic for this, not knowing what to expect. And I just put gas traps at the entrances to everything. And by the time they actually tried to go through them, they were dead.
Oh, 5 head.
That's the winning strategy in the
Light,
hunt and
yeah.
in competitive.
Yeah, yeah.
Life pro
Transferable
tip.
skills.
Apex Life pro tip.
Probably
um,
my favorite part of the hunt this week was if you after you plant the digger, if you go up the rope and grab the devotion, it has a turbocharger. There's a gold devotion with a turbocharger, so no wind up. And I missed the turbocharger, man. Devotion was my gun of choice before they got rid of it.
Yeah,
yeah.
now it's been confined to the randomness of the gold drops. So
Yeah, but
don't see it as much
even the
anymore.
gold devotion does not have a turbocharger
Yeah,
in the
so this
regular
was an
game.
altered
Yeah,
devotion. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Throwback devotion. What were you,
Yeah.
go ahead,
Oh,
Whitney.
I was just gonna say, like, I thought it was pretty cool. this is a little bit of outside of what we were getting to, but I think the last episode I said 5 treasure packs is kind of a lot to like have to unlock it. Because I really do have to log in 5 days, and like with everything that's going on in the world, I kind of wasn't feeling it for a couple days,
Yeah.
and literally in my mind, I'm just like, oh crap, I gotta log in and do this stupid quest.
Mhm.
Like, that's not any reason that I want to play a game. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I derailed what we were saying, but that was
No,
on
no.
my mind as we were talking about it.
Yeah,
So.
it's funny, Andrew and I were a pack short. We
Oh.
had to play before we could do the hunt. Cause yeah, I mean, right now, yeah, I'll be honest, it is hard to log in every single day. And we were discussing earlier, Andrew, the reasoning behind them wanting you to come in every single day. You had an idea for the packs about making them more rare.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be awesome, I think, if they just simply made them much more rare to come across, but you can stack them. So
Hmm.
if you have a free day, you can grind the whole day and get the packs done for the week, rather than having to do a sort of weird daily check-in every time.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, there's obviously some pretty extenuating circumstances in the world right now,
Mm.
but I like Whitney. I'm finding it hard to find the time to log in every day to get my treasure pack. But there is a catch up, so you're not totally locked out of the content.
I mean,
Um,
there's a catch up if you want to pay for it,
it,
right? But
yeah, if you
that's
want to
the
pay
sort
for
of
it.
like monetization strategy. I mean, I mean, without getting into the nuance of that, like you understand the reasoning behind it, but it is kind of also expecting or asking a lot of players,
Hmm.
you know? But I'm also maybe asking too much and expecting my games to be totally free and never have to spend a penny to support the developers create
Right.
themselves.
Yeah. Well, I'm the type of person that loves to put money into the games I play, especially free games. If I like to invest into skins and stuff like that. So I don't expect my games to be free, but I definitely have a very firm value limit in my head of like what I'm willing to pay for. A catch up mechanic is not really one of those things. It's more
Mm.
along the lines of like cool skins, new
Yeah, yeah,
content.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that too.
Yeah, but
Um,
I think this hunt was pretty much on par with last week. I think that there was an interesting twist with being in the shadow form. It didn't extend. I Part of me was kind of hoping every week would get longer and more complex, but I
Hmm.
think we're kind of seeing what to expect now for the rest of the season, in terms of like length and complexity. But I also fully expect them to keep mixing it up every week for it to be a little bit different, a little bit unexpected.
I mean, to be
Yeah.
fair, like we are kind of maybe asking a lot for them to keep up a battle royale game, to introduce all these new areas, zones, um, characters, mechanics, all kinds of crazy stuff. And to then on top of that, just say, and also give us like a real PvE mode that's actually a campaign focus, and basically build another mini game inside of a game. But that is my dream, so maybe we will see it eventually.
Yeah, and then there's the work from home layer on top of that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
for
that as well.
development, right? Andrew, what are you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, essentially, my impression has been like about what I expect, you
Hmm.
know. It hasn't necessarily been super disappointing or anything, but definitely, you know, nothing has dropped my jaw yet. It's just stuff here and there that I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's worth playing for sure. And I'm interested in the overall story arc and thing.
Yeah, yeah, I don't expect it to be much more longer and more complex, and I think that little details go a long way. Um, like for example, I saw the ship when the ship that you escape on this week, when it landed. I saw it come in and it knocked a bunch of the prowlers back
Hmm.
off the ledge back into the ocean. And
Oh wow.
those kind of details are really cool, and it gives you a reason to play it again if you think you might see something else or pick up on a detail you missed. There's a little bit of built-in replayability. I think if they can start hiding more stuff around, more reasons to look, uh, you know, long and far and try and find more details, I think that can help a lot. Um,
Yeah,
I
I totally agree.
I
The
don't.
replayability, like I did the first two over and over a bunch just to see, if the ghost flyers would have different gold options in the gold boxes they were carrying. I found that they did, And I also found that your timing mattered regarding whether or not you saw one or if they'd be in the right place for you to get them. So there is some replayability. And I totally agree with you about it would be nice to have some Easter eggs scattered about. And they may actually have those just planned for later ones.
Hmm.
But as of now, I haven't found too much, but still enough to, like you said, go back and see what other kind of cool things I can find here.
Yeah, I still think that they need to add difficulty settings, speed run options, some reason to replay these things if we're only getting, a 10-minute mission once a week. Or 10 minutes is the limit. I suspect most people are completing these in just 3 or 4 minutes and then never playing them again.
Yeah.
But I still, like I've been saying, I appreciate that they're trying something so unique. So I'm having
Yeah,
fun with it.
definitely.
Let's talk a little bit about the lore that we get after the fact. Last week, I think Andrew pointed out something that bothered me as well, that Wraith was playable in the mission, but should not have been from a story standpoint because she wasn't there, right? The part of the team went into the mission, and the other part of the team was her and Octane on the date. So those things didn't line up. I saw more things that didn't line up this week, technically. But let's talk about what happens in that lore piece. Whitney, can you give us a quick summary?
Well, so it's told from Octane's point of view, and what we sort of see happening here is they're trying to figure out who this like snitch is. Number one, who told Revenant where everybody was, right? So that's like one big piece of it. Who's the snitch, right? And then there's the portal situation, which I didn't fully follow what exactly was happening there, but Octane was debating whether to follow everyone else or to stay with Watson. And we already know that Octane spilled all the beans to about what was going on to the person that he was spying with, but then he promised to get Bangalore's autograph. That's happened in the last one, right? So, when we see in this mission here that we're looking for some other artifact piece as well, we still know that Watson is not like healed. But, from my point of view, I feel like this is leading up to something that the next one is going to really clarify a lot of these still open questions about what this is all for,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, again, coming from Octane's point of view, and Octane is not, we've kind of said, like, established already, not exactly the brightest crayon in the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're sort of at his point of view, getting his side of the story, and it's not even fully clear that he understands what's going on.
Right.
But I'm sure maybe there's some theorist out there who's like able to put everything together, overarching, going back to Titanfall 1, some nuanced thing that somebody saw in a corner 10 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. But that's kind of the way it works, right? I mean, I think like the weirdest thing about this to me is that it takes place in an alternate reality, and sometimes I'm not like crazy about like when games and shows do that because they have all these conflicting timelines.
Right.
But I also kind of understand that if you don't do that, you're sort of confined to only telling one story in a lot of ways or one sort of version of events. So it'll be interesting to see what this brings about, and maybe even to see how it ties into what's happening in present day modern Apex Legends as we stand today, right? Like in the
Yeah.
main Kings Canyon World's Edge.
Yeah. I think that there's some reveals we get, and then there's a lot of questions that get answered. But I kind of wanted to touch on some of the things that I am unsure about and kind of get your guys' point of view on that. So when Revenant reveals himself, as Whitney pointed out, he says that a little birdie told him about their meeting and what they were talking about. So we have this question now of who is the mole, right? Who is leaking to Revenant what their plan is. And then somebody asks Revenant what he wants, and Loba says that her theory is that he wants to take down the syndicate and stage a coup. And I'm wondering what exactly that means.
Well, we understand that Revenant was a sort of a product of like manufacturing, and that his sort of discovery with the knife in his neck that kind of like made him realize he was a simulacrum,
Mhm.
left him on like a very, very angry, like that made him very, very upset, very angry, right? So it's probable that he's against, just all of it. Like he doesn't want to be that. He already hates humans anyway. That's why he calls them skin bags, right?
Mhm.
And even in this world, this universe, like he says, like I think one of the lines in that is just like, now why would I want to go up there back to where all the skin bags are, or something like that.
Yeah, so the part of the suspicion is that he wants to go into this alternate, what I keep calling Halloween Town universe, and deal with that version of him, right? But as Revenant explains in this lore piece, he has no interest in fighting the other Revenant or taking him down, and he's like, why would I want to go where I'm in the king of the skin bags? So he actually doesn't care what they're doing.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, but he also doesn't know why Loba is collecting all these pieces. So while he has figured out what they're doing, he doesn't understand that Loba is collecting these pieces to trade for the information to actually kill him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he tells Loba, the only reason I'm letting you live is because I think that your vendetta against me is adorable, and if you don't care about that anymore, if you're off doing whatever in this alternate universe, then maybe I should just kill you now, because he doesn't understand that the whole reason we're collecting these artifacts and doing all this is to kill him, right?
Right.
That's my understanding of it. Is that how you guys took it too?
Yeah, I'm still curious about his actual motives, because I was like, oh, we're gonna get a big reveal here. And then he kind of rolled up and did some bad guy stuff, said some bad guy lines, and then slithered out of there.
Right.
So it's still not super clear, right? Because in my head, I'm like, okay, he probably has a vendetta against Hammond. There's no doubt that the legends aren't desiring to cooperate with Hammond.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, at some point, I feel like they're going to end up helping each other in some way. And apparently, they're, you know, tame enough to talk to each other. So I still don't know. Long story
Right.
short is I'm left scratching my head a little bit, and it didn't really take the direction I thought it would. But I'm still interested. I
Yeah.
still think the characters, are nuanced and complicated, and they all have their own motivations. And now we're kind of in this murder mystery clue game in the Apex Legends world. So it's got a lot of loose ends that I want to stick around to see tied up and see how it plays out. But I don't know anything. I'm just clueless at this point.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. Revenant comes in and acts threatening, kind of lingers around Watson, eventually jumps up on the table where she's resting, makes everybody uncomfortable. And then out of nowhere, Bangalore, Bloodhound, and Gibraltar portal in. And when that happened, it was surprising to me that they weren't there. I guess I assumed that they were.
I did too. Yeah. I
Because
was like,
they've been
what?
there in, I think, the other episodes, right? So
That's what I
Yeah.
thought. I thought
Yeah.
that when they rescued Watson, that at least Bangalore was there with her.
Yeah. Because she's like a big ringleader too, aside from Loba. And also, I guess it explains too, because during the whole creepy sequence, I was like, why are they letting Revenant bully them? There's like a ton of them. They could just
Right.
defeat Revenant easy. He's just a guy with a totem ability.
Right.
And then they portal in and save the day. So I was like, okay, so I guess we were dealing with an incomplete group the whole time.
Yeah,
They
so
didn't know.
I imagine the way we're supposed to take it is that when Watson got hurt, part of the team rescued her and got her out, while canonically Bangalore, Bloodhound, and Gibraltar finished the mission and retrieved the artifact.
Yeah.
So,
I think
like
that's
last
safe to
week's
assume.
hunt, those are the three characters that were actually doing the mission. So they come back, stand off with Revenant. He raises a totem, and then Bangalore tells Octane not to touch it. What's that about?
Mm. Do you have any theories, Whitney? I don't
well,
know.
theoretically, he raises a totem and you'd become a shadow character, and they don't want that to happen,
Does that
obviously.
corrupt your soul? Maybe it has lasting health effects, like Julian or something. I'm just kidding.
But I do sort of feel like, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's like a trope in a lot of like shows and movies that like oh well I'm gonna just use this drug or this like thing, but then the more you use it the more it sort of starts to consume you. So
Mm.
maybe that's what they're going for there. Like if you use the totem too many times, like you'll be corrupted forever or something. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah,
And I also, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
I'm not too sure of the lore around the totems. We have a lot of totem stuff going on this week, both that piece and the lore, and then with the totems we need to destroy to escape shadow form in the mission. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm kind of a little bit confused about what the totems are meant to be in in the context of the story.
Right. And
Because
then I wonder if Octane at the end, because he has a monologue, but it's obviously wrapped up in the comedic conversation was it of unconscious Watson. But at the end, did he take the totem? Was the totem still there, or did he just kind of go rogue? I wasn't really sure on that
so
either.
that was the last piece that really confused me. Bangalore tells Octane he needs to wait until the next night to go on the next mission, which is the mission that we just played. Except that when everybody leaves, Octane has a debate with himself. Well, he has a debate with Watson, who's actually not responding to him. And Octane ultimately decides that he's going to do whatever he wants and he's going to go start the fight on his own. But that's not what
Yeah.
happened in the mission we played, right? So
Okay.
so it's almost it to me it's starting to feel like the lore that we're getting each week is not very connected to the missions that we're going on.
Yeah, there's some problems there for sure. Uh, maybe
It'll
it's
be
not supposed to be taken too literally, but I don't know. I feel like they could tie that in since they've half been doing it anyways.
It'll be interesting, and I also think this is very respawn of them to seed clues later than we expect those clues to be seeded, right?
Mm-hmm.
We took like assuming that you didn't read any of the data mines or anything, you would have had no clue who the little girl was at the end of the trailer with Revenant, and you would not have gotten that information until like legitimately like 8 weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's entirely possible that we're like trying to put these clues together and they haven't given us the one clue to help us really understand the trajectory of what exactly is going on here. Um, but yeah, I mean, the Portal 2 was like a question, and maybe it was in there, and you can tell me if I maybe didn't realize where they were portaling from. But, when we watched the Halloween trailer, it was basically somebody took like the wrong portal and portaled into the underworld from the above, like the other world,
Right.
like the real world, I guess is what we can call it. Real world was Halloween world. So my question could be, is that where they were coming from? Is there some reason they went up to the other world? I don't know, unless I just completely missed it. They were portaling from like a block away.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think in the story itself, just if you read each chapter of the story, that there is, I don't know if you would call it inconsistencies, but there's some vague plot points. But
Mm.
on top of that, now that the hunts are now pushed past the story, right? Because last week's lore and this week's lore happen back to back in like what you would say in real time.
Right.
Whereas
Mm-hmm.
whereas the mission that we went on this week would have happened a week later, or I'm sorry,
Right,
the next night would have happened
Hmm.
right,
tonight.
right. Okay,
So
yeah.
so now that the gameplay narrative is ahead of the written lore,
Yes.
it's getting to be confusing in a way that makes me feel like they're no longer connected.
Well, what I want to say is that Octane wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go take part in this action and then went on the mission. Maybe he's actually doing something straight up elsewhere uh,
But
that had
wasn't
nothing to do.
but Octane was playable.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, maybe the mistake is that they're not consistent with who is playable and who isn't, because we've already seen kind of weird issues with that in the past. So maybe that's all there is to it, and we'll see that Octane has done something maybe with Hammond or something else, and that's where he went rather than, and they, for whatever reason, just let him still be playable, just for the sake of I guess, player options being able to do it. But it's
Hmm,
weird to me that they would make Watson not playable and
right.
half commit to that sort of immersion. So I don't know. That's kind of my theory, but we'll see, I guess, next week.
Yeah. Now, what Bangalore told Octane to do, what his actual mission is to go, I guess, continue that date, right? Because Bangalore wants some kind of physical evidence to, as she put it, to out. Loba, or to expose Loba, she says. So I don't know how she expects that. That to me seems like a thread that's just going to sort of end, and maybe the whole point of having that moment alone with Octane where he decides to do his own thing is just to tell us that he's not going back to Yoko. He's not going to try to resolve that or get evidence against Loba. Like, the story's going to keep moving in a different direction now.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. That's pretty much the questions I had about it. I'm getting more confused as it goes. Is sort of my impression right now.
Yeah,
and it seems
maybe
like go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say maybe it'll turn out to be a good thing where it's like Game of Thrones and there's gonna be a million different storylines happening at once. It'll get crazy confusing, and then it'll all end in a disappointing finale.
Yeah, I was like, where are you going with this? We don't talk about Game of Thrones anymore.
Yeah, that's behind us now.
Yeah. Well, it seems like we're all a little bit confused about some details, and I hope that those things get cleared up as we
One
go
more
on.
fun fact,
Yeah.
by the way, I almost didn't notice, but in the dialogue scene where there's no voice acting, of course, it's just text that you're reading, there is a heart monitor in the background. So it's supposed to represent Watson. If you turn up your volume a lot, you'll be able to hear in the background some subtle noises. One of those is like the life support that Watson's on. So kind of a cool little detail
cool.
they added in. Yeah.
Definitely, that is super cool.
I also liked the background at the beginning of the chapter where Octane is holding a selfie stick. I think we've seen Octane with a selfie stick before, maybe, but I just
he does it in a jump animation.
Oh yeah.
And I think a loading screen has him.
Maybe it was just the loading screen. But
there's multiple instances of him with the selfie stick. Pretty funny. It's probably GoPro.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're actually going to take a quick break because we have a very special guest. Dazs from Team SoaR is here. We're going to talk to him about his Apex career. He's a content creator and a streamer and a competitive Apex player. So we'll be right back in just a few with Dazs. Hey, everybody. We are back with Dazs. Dazs, thank you so much for joining us. You are actually our first interview guest, so I appreciate you being here. How you doing? Good, man. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got involved with Apex?
Sure. I guess we can go back from the beginning. So I'm actually a Battlefield guy initially. And of course, you know, Apex kind of came out of nowhere with a surprise banger of a game. And this was around the time where I was playing a lot of Battlefield 5, and I was kind of going back and forth constantly through Apex. And as we know, Battlefield 5 has that bit of a rough history currently. So, you know, even though I was kind of playing Apex on the side, it was a game that just kept drawing me back. And I had a lot of friends, such as a good friend of mine, Fireborn, who even play tested the game. He wasn't allowed to tell me that at the time, but he was like, there's going to be a game that's really going to shake things up. And I was like, you know what? I'll trust you on that. We'll kind of see what happens. And so that's kind of where my intro to Apex kind of came from. And of course, my relationship with EA. Luckily, you know, Apex is an EA game, so it kind of works that way. So that's a positive.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Cool. And tell us a little bit too about how you got involved with SoaR as well. We'd love to know that.
Sure, not a problem. So I actually ran my own team in Battlefield. It was called Ascend. We did a lot of projects with EA. We did a lot of big initiatives and things with them. And at some point, I was like, you know what? I really got to focus on me. I got to focus on my own creative drive, whether it was streaming, content, the whole 9 yards. And I kind of asked myself, I was like, well, you know what to do? I'm just going to branch out from my own thing that I made. It was literally my baby. And I said, you know what? I really need to play other games. I need to branch out from just, you know, Battlefield. I need to go into something like Apex that has a larger audience. And, you know, for me, I kind of look at myself as a small guy, you know, even though I'm still growing and learning a whole lot in the scene itself. So when I look at like what SoaR is, initially I was looking at tons of orgs and everything. I had a lot of offers from a lot of big teams, and I won't name them because, you know, there was a lot of offers from what they were offering to me. But I had a friend who was in SoaR actually, and they said, you know what, I recommend you over that you try them out. And the reason why is because my basis from the Battlefield community really is deep rooted into montages. And that's where SoaR's beginning really is as well. As you know, their basis is in Call of Duty montages. Of course, they do a whole lot more, whereas lifestyle, Apex, Fortnite, the whole 9 yards. But initially, when I was brought on, it was signed on as Battlefield with the idea that I would branch off. With that, you know, obviously on my Twitter handle, it says SoaR General Manager. So probably the next question I assume you guys would have is how in the world does that happen?
Yeah.
Right?
Honestly,
Exactly.
honestly, I don't really know. It's not like I really ask for something like that, but if there's something I am passionate about when it comes to a gaming scene, is making a positive change and influence. Since I had ran my own organization and I had a lot of relationships with EA and a lot of publishers, I knew that I could do something bigger in SoaR. And a lot of offers before I joined SoaR were giving me a position such as a talent manager or a general manager. But at the time, that's not something I wanted, strictly because I wanted to focus more on content. The content side of things, like growing my stream, competing in Apex, you know, really grinding, practicing on my aim, things of that nature. But there's something that just keeps pulling me back into management, I guess, pulling me back into the whole scene. And I don't really know what it is, but when I saw it in SoaR, and huge shout out to Mac and Crude, is that the reason why I decided to say, you know what, I want to do something bigger in SoaR is that not only were they willing to give me the ability to do it, but they saw the willingness in me, and I saw that SoaR was willing to put creators first and to take it to the next level. Because I mean, SoaR, even though it's a bigger team now, it really started from humble beginnings to being just a Call of Duty clan of trickshot kids, essentially, to what it is today, taking things to a larger and bigger level, which is pretty exciting across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does the day-to-day look like to you as a manager, as a general manager?
That's a really good question. I still juggle a lot. So I still have my day job, just as an example. I literally still work 9 to 5:30. I live in Manhattan,
Wow.
the craziness. I still have a lot of my office supplies over here. You probably see like a Battlefield 5 thing, a bag, my camera equipment. It's behind the green screen because I'm still recording and stuff like that. So don't worry, it's not too much of a mess. Just my camera stuff that we'll pull out. There's like a tripod over there. So that's all it really is. You know, we pull it out. But I mean, I work 9 to 5:30. I still have my day job and I still juggle things. So it's like 9 to 5:30. I work for a real estate company, human resources. So that's kind of where I get a lot of my, I guess you could say, general manager experience. Would kind of put me in a positive edge to bring something like that to the gaming scene. And then right afterwards, like at this moment, it's like 6 o'clock. Go hop into scrims. Go stream. Things of that nature. So it's interesting, I guess, say the least, because afterwards, it's like, okay, where does the SoaR general manager part take in? Well, during my day job, I'm literally juggling meeting for meeting. Now, obviously, my day job it's not necessarily fully aware of that, but I'm good at what I do. Let me go to say I'm good at what I do. So when they need me, I'm balancing. Like, I'm hopping into one call into another. My boss calls me, my day job says I need this. I'm like, I'll get it to you in like 30 minutes. And then, I'm reaching out to Crude and Mac. I'm like, I'll get you that spreadsheet in a hot minute. I'm like, I'm going to reach out to people within the team. This is how they're doing performance-wise. Let me look at the analytics. Let's look at the YouTube side of things. Are we going to upload? Let's hop into a quick call. But it's a constant juggle. And it's mostly because I'm so passionate about what I do. Even with my day job in human resources, I literally kind of play a jack of all trades. And I kind of provide that to SoaR Gaming as well. So I really work on the performance management side of things, to helping with the YouTube side of things, to helping give input on the decision and language on things that we're working on. So it's quite a lot.
Do you sleep?
That is a solid question. My fiance is extremely patient with me, to say the least. And it's a blessing that she is so patient, because I mean, well, once I finish the stream, I'm trying to get a little bit of time to wrap things up, and we try to schedule our time and days together, just to make sure that we're spending time together. I mean, we have a lot of crazy and big plans. I mean, there's no way I can keep up this momentum forever, where I'm working the day job, SoaR Gaming, and then streaming like all at once. The only reason I feel like I'm able to do it is because I'm relatively young for now. So I'm gonna kind of juggle it and try to survive. But for the most part, it's definitely difficult. In the long run, the day job has been luckily blessed us. We actually purchased a house last year in Tennessee, and the reason why we did that is I got a friend out there who's a content creator. I have a content creator who was from New York, moved into the house to kind of caretake the home. Literally charging him almost nothing for the house. But it's a story where once I'm ready to leave New York and we're ready to start a family, gaming, streaming, and all that is going to be full time at that
Right,
point,
right,
which
right.
it will be doable in a city like that with the money that we have saved. So I mean, it's not like we're like, oh, we're loaded, we're loaded. No, it took years and years of grinding, hard work, and just juggling situations like this. You know, even living in the city. So when you
Yeah.
say like take it back to the beginning, even Whitney, you know, I live in the city, just so you guys know, Finn and Jasper, that we met, and obviously we went to like what was it called, the Casey Neistat runs that
Yeah,
event.
368
There we go,
gaming
thank you.
studio, right?
So yeah, 368 gaming, and it was really awesome, like being able to be there. And I know the area so well because actually what brought me to New York is like, why would a gamer ever try to set up in New York? I came here for musical theater, man. I was doing Broadway and off Broadway, and I was doing a Broadway gig, and then I reached a point where one day I was doing a Broadway gig for you guys know the show Wicked at the
Yeah.
Yeah,
National
yeah,
Theater,
of
right?
course.
So I played Bach, and at the time I was a little thinner. You know, obviously quarantine, you kind of fluff out a little bit. But,
Quarantine effect.
yeah, the quarantine effect before and after. But you know, they had me stand in for Girl Scout event where they, instead of bringing the actors and having them perform 3 times in a day, they would have us perform in the morning on their behalf. So that was, but even though the money was decent, I came to a roadblock where I was like, man, I should just do YouTube streaming and this stuff more full time. And well, I guess I can say I'm not really disappointed.
What a crazy
Yeah.
path.
Yeah,
It's so fascinating.
The unfortunate part when we really look at the world right now, you know, I have a lot of friends who do a lot of shows, and it's just like, man, if I was doing theater right now, what kind of scary situation would we be in? You
Yeah.
know?
What would you even do? Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
crazy because, you know, right now everything's virtual. Even if we're having this meeting, we're virtual right now. Awesome podcast, by the way. You guys are great.
Wow, shucks. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that you had a musical theater background, because I was actually a classically trained trumpet player before going into this industry and everything like that. So all of my colleagues are finding ways to adapt to this sort of situation we've got because of the pandemic. So I definitely know how that is, and it's definitely a weird feeling and a weird situation. People in the performative arts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's interesting. Tangentially, I was in film, but we're all gravitating towards games because it's something that we can still support ourselves with virtually from home. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. But so I would love to talk to you a little bit more about competing in, competitive Apex and your sort of thoughts on the comp scene and how it's evolved over the last, give or take year, right?
Sure.
And what are you excited for that's coming up as well?
So, being competitive is something that I've always been really passionate about. I literally even spend like 30 minutes a day just practicing my aim on a. You guys probably heard of Kovacs for like, oh man, that guy's Kovacs out of his mind. I put so many hours in Kovacs and just trying to refine that craft, and it's an interesting conversation. I feel like I have a lot of insight in terms of like Apex competitive, because I feel like it's a scene that can really go really, really far. But the struggle is obviously that it's a battle royale. I find it very interesting that we don't see teams like FaZe, Clan, or Hunter Thieves investing into it. But at the same time, it's really hard, especially now, where you look at a battle royale and you question, well, if we're gambling on a team in terms of the performance, how can they guarantee that they're going to win because it's a battle royale? Well, luckily with Apex, you do have different aspects where you have team comp, synergy, and we see great teams like TSM able to clutch out more consistent wins. Granted, recently, they've been kind of etched out, but they're still up there in the top performers. I think Apex competitively has a really bright future. It reminds me so much of like the movement of Battlefield, and also the interesting part about Apex in general is that it was built upon Respawn, which was a developer that developed the first Call of Duty, which is a game. The only Call of Duty I have ever touched was the first Call of Duty, and I can kind of get the hints and feel of that game in there, which I find fascinating. So I guess the future of Apex, if they keep on with it and they keep producing these tournaments, I feel like a lot of the momentum was lost because of COVID-19, but they're still pushing it because of the online virtual tournaments and everything, which is really cool. And I hope that they continue on with it because we see it happen with Fortnite. And I guess the really the biggest thing we have to ask is, Fortnite really struggles with their competitive scene, where because it's like, do we cater to the hardcore audience or do we cater to the casuals? Apex is a pretty hardcore game, and I know you would know, Whitney, just playing it, that it's not necessarily the easiest game, but it does have a fantastic pinging system. It's very intuitive, but when it starts getting super complex, it gets really difficult very quickly. So I feel like if the professionals, when the whole scene, take it very seriously, such as what you see the SoaR creators, where you see TSM, if they helmet and they bring a huge level of professionalism that I feel like is lacking in Fortnite. And the reason I feel like that's lacking in Fortnite in general is because of the age. You see a lot of Fortnite kids go off, badmouth, Fortnite, when it's a great game. It's doing amazing things, but you see them bashing, saying it's a bad game. It's not doing very well. They don't listen. They don't listen. It's like, well, we saw the same thing kind of happen in Apex for a little while, and a lot of those creators kind of moved on to Valorant. But a lot of the Apex creators still here and that are competing, I'm noticing that the scene seems to be maturing, and it seems to be growing a lot more organically, and I hope that continues to happen as long as EA is still willing to back it.
Yeah, that was a great sort of contrast there between like the sort of Fortnite situation too. And I also love that you called out the sort of difference between the catering to a casual player base and a competitive player base, because I really feel like that's one of the things that keeps Apex exciting in a lot of ways, that they're sort of thinking about that as they go along. So I thought that was a pretty cool insight. What are your thoughts on the current season?
I think the current season is probably the best that it's ever been, to be quite honest. I think that Apex is really nailing a lot of things where they, obviously reduce muzzle flash, create a great character. They've revamped the maps in a lot of great and unique ways. I think that they're heading in the right direction as long as they keep building from here and they keep engaging. It's like they've got a great balance, of keeping the casual audience here and then keeping the pros super engaged with whatever they're grinding for, the ALGS tournaments, or like what we're doing right now, GLL scrims. So as long as they keep up this momentum, they keep funding it, and they keep up with the changes that the community really cares about, I think the game is going to be in a place where, years from now, we're going to say Apex is a staple. Because the same thing is going to happen with Valorant. It's like, if you draw the comparison, Valorant struggles with the same things that I see. The pros are going to tear it apart. And a lot of the Apex pros that went over from Apex to Valorant, you see them over there still tarnishing the name. I think that Valorant has a bright future. If I were to compare it direct apples to apples with Apex, is that it's going to struggle. There's going to be imbalances. There's going to be things that they say they're going to deliver upon, but they're not perfect. And it's not going to be perfect, because even CSGO, when it was first created, wasn't perfect at the start. So the question is, just as long as Apex doesn't necessarily abandon the thought process of this game whenever it comes out on a new console, I think it's going to be great. I think that organizations like SoaR will continue to invest and really care about the future of this game as long as the developers are still also invested in its future. I get hit up so much by independent people. And the thing is, I try to keep me, SoaR general manager, and also competitive player separate. Of course, the first thing that happens is when I play with anybody, it's like, oh, can I get signed to SoaR? What can I do? It's like, listen, if we're gonna play, we're just gonna play, okay? Like, if we want to play the tournament, we're just gonna play the tournament. If we're gonna do rank, we're gonna do rank. I'm not gonna be your gateway to get signed. So
Yeah.
But people, even before this call, I literally got a call or a question from somebody I just randomly met, was doing ranked. It's like, hey, how do I create a good gaming resume? What do I need to do? And it's like, I know it's one of your questions here, where it's like, what are your advice to streamers or people to get recognized? Is really, well, you don't really focus on trying to get recognized. You really just focus on your craft and focus on growing your own platform and your own brand. I always tell people, by the time a team is ready to pick you up, you don't necessarily need the team anymore. The only reason you should join a team is that you're looking for that environment where you find community. So if there's a community you enjoy and love and you feel like you'd be a good fit, then by all means continue to go for that org, whether it's TSM, FaZe, SoaR, Rogue, I don't know, the list goes on in terms of organizations that you can love and go for. But if you're looking for that quick fix and grind, it just doesn't really happen in the scene. You can join a top tier organization and then say, I'm going to get 1 million views now on my Twitch or YouTube. And then if people are not watching you today, they're not magically going to start watching you tomorrow. All the work you put into is what you build for it. And why I say I feel like a smaller creator is that people try to pigeonhole you into a game. If I stream Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, I get 50 to 100 concurrent viewers. If I stream Apex, I'm like 20 to 30, if not sometimes 10. And it's like, well, it's getting people because, people who love Battlefield love that grittiness and they love that realism, but Apex is like, it's too cartoony, don't want to watch it. But there's an audience there, and whenever you branch out into a new category, you have to make sure that, well, if you stick with it, you're going to find something. And I feel like some days I find something, all of a sudden I pop up to 60. I'm like, what is the difference from today? Honestly, you can't really predict waves like that. You just keep grinding and keep doing it. It's like when you saw Jim Carrey do a bunch of comedies and he did his first drama, and nobody would watch Jim Carrey. The question is, well, I don't watch Jim Carrey for dramas. I'm not going to watch. He's probably bad. But if you stick with it, you'll branch out, you'll grow, and it's just going to take time and dedication. So really the biggest advice, time, dedication, and just do what you need to do. There's no questions about it. If you're going to succeed, you'll succeed. And if you're not, well, you need to go back to the drawing board and see what you need to do to grow and evaluate from it.
But seriously, you're going to give us all SoaR contracts after this, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Would you
Make
say
sure that deal is still under the table?
I'll hook them up. I'll send them I'll send you the contract over right now via email.
I'll have my agent look at it.
so? You would say you're sort of the Jim Carrey of Twitch, then, right?
No, that would be great.
That's what I'm taking away
I
from
think
this.
I have way too many dad jokes. I feel like my humor's a little too bad for it.
Never too many.
I would love to know some up-and-coming creators, be it SoaR or beyond, who you think that we should be paying attention to or watch. And, it doesn't even have to be limited to Apex, just people you think are interesting that you're excited about.
In terms of creators, I feel like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
biggest creators that I love to see are not necessarily those that are even popping off with views, are those that are smaller, but I look at their chat engagement and they're growing. I'll give an example. You probably know It's Timmy in Apex, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
We followed each other pretty early on, and I remember hosting him when I was playing Battlefield, and I saw him play Apex because he has a friend that I know, Bronzy, who plays with him and now is a part of like the Golden Guardians. Timmy back then was only averaging like 20 or 30 viewers, and I saw it and I was like, man, this guy's gonna blow up. And the only reason why is that he was still on regardless if there was 20 or 30 people watching, or if there's now what he has 500. So it's mostly seeing the people who are small, because doing this long enough where I ran a team in Battlefield, or whether it's SoaR, it's so easy to kind of just see a smaller creator and you can tell when somebody just has a passion and the drive and they're going to do something with it. I always try to take that own advice and like do my own grind, but then I end up on the management side of things, like watching it, So I've seen it many, many times before, but really that effort is just seeing somebody. And I guarantee all of you guys can think of somebody, or anybody who watches this podcast, where you look and evaluate and you think, oh, there's that one guy, he's really grinding. But if they just keep at it over the course of, let's say, a few months, 6 months to a year, that person can be completely different. I've seen people who I've recruited to teams at 500 subscribers, and then a year or two, or even 5 years from now, all of a sudden they're at 50K to 100K. It's really not a matter of, well, am I going to get lucky? It's like everyone's going to get lucky. It's just a matter of time before you actually get lucky. Some people may take 2 years, some people may take 5, It really depends. As long as you're in it, you stay in it long enough, people will know who you are, trust me.
That is so awesome. It's so good to hear from you and your perspective on all of this. I think our listeners are really going to appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today about all of this and all your experiences.
Yeah.
Do any of the co-hosts have anything you want to ask? Any questions you've been holding back?
Yeah. When you talked about the support for Apex compared to other competitive games, I find as a spectator, I wanted to get your input on this. As a spectator experience, it's so much easier to see the narratives unfold throughout a match or throughout a tournament in a game like Apex. And I find compared to something like an Overwatch, it's a lot easier to watch and absorb and understand what's going on in the games. Do you find that to be the case as well?
Well, that's I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's the feedback I've always given to Battlefield, and we'll talk about Battlefield 1 because that's my NDA kind of lifted from it. But whenever I was giving feedback to Battlefield 1 back in the day, the question is how it's so difficult to follow when you're seeing 32 people versus 32, and you're like, who do you follow? Who is the star of the show? the reason why battle royales are so popular now is that the narrative, even for, you know, like if you were to ask your grandmother or grandfather, or anybody who has no concept of video games, just to instantly start watching, they'll say, there's a number of people alive, they have one life, will they survive? You know, the story of a battle royale is very simple where it comes to something like Overwatch, where I agree 100% with you, Jasper, where the question is like, oh, what does that ability do? What just happened? They reset. Where are they at now? And it's like, it's hard to get a game where you have a reset timer where you start to feel, I guess, quote unquote, tension. It's why CSGO is so popular, when you know you have one life and you're able to track the lives of each individual person and see them clutch out a moment. When you have a respawn system like Overwatch or even Battlefield, because I would have loved to see Battlefield competitive in its day, but it's so hard to commentate. And like, if you were to even commentate something like it, you're like, oh my god, there's 6 people versus 6 people, they all died, but they respawn and they're back over on A objective. You're like, what do you mean they're back on A? They're back on A. Why? What has the ticket system work? Did they win? Did they lose? And most of the people, like I guess grandparents, will say, well, honey, I mean, they just respawn. So did anybody win? You know? But it's so simple for anybody to watch, like a story, and even for content. When you post it up on, you know, YouTube, you know, when you look at the narrative that somebody's able to create, and there's so many great Apex content creators. There was one where I came across, I can't remember the name right now, I wish I did, where all he does is just create a story. He's like, so guys, I hopped into a round, I look around me and there's these noobs, and he's like, I'm gonna follow him the rest of the round and see what happens. You know, that's so interesting. And that was definitely the character and voice he ensued. But that's an interesting story. You know, you've already laid the narrative, you know, and like what that's supposed to be compared to like Overwatch or let's say, for example, Battlefield or even Call of Duty, where you have that respawn system and there's just not a story because the story gets reset after every life. And of course, if you try to force that mentality into Call of Duty or Battlefield or Overwatch, it definitely changes the pace of the whole game. You know, you want those second-to-second moments to really matter. And I've conveyed it so many times to developers. Where it's like, how do you hone in and how do you get an audience to cheer for an individual besides just trying to highlight montages or moments or watch them from a streaming perspective? That's probably why Warzone is popping off finally again now, because Call of Duty had a struggle finding its footing for the longest time. Because, you know, you would watch a creator where, you know, they would just decimate a lobby, but you didn't really care about who they were decimating. You just watched that one person. But now when you're in Warzone, where you have everyone has one life, not to say, like, I know some people probably watch the podcast like, I'm so tired of battle royales. It's like yes, but it's so easy to get the story across and like what a battle royale is, and you can really branch it off from there and kind of grow a game from that package. And it's why developers are all jumping in on it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well
Absolutely.
said. Man, the only thing I'd have is there's some recent controversy in competitive scene
Oh yeah.
about a certain item called the gold res shield. I'm just curious to see if you had a dog in this fight at all. Do you think it belongs in competitive or what?
It's like when we had the golden armors, right? I was so glad, and this is where I can tell Apex is listening, is like, if you have the golden armors, you know statistically that a Pathfinder's going to get it. They're going to queue away and get the bat off midair. If they are technically and mechanically sound, right? It needed to get nerfed. It needed to get changed. That's why the grapple got changed. And while I think 35 seconds is a bit egregious, even as I'm doing scrims, I don't see any Lobas. The first week we were doing scrims, there was Lobas everywhere, and everyone was testing it, and everyone was like, gosh darn it, what are you doing? Just go back to Pathfinder.
Yeah.
You know? Everyone like abandoned her. So to answer your question with the gold res shield, is that really it doesn't really have its place. It does, but then it makes it kind of cheapens the kills, you know, where especially when you're at the last zone, you just see everyone's dead, and then you're waiting for a golden res shield, and somebody gets robbed of second place, but they only got to second place because they were just sitting out there with a golden res shield. So I don't know if it necessarily has a place. You know, it's like I don't have like the highest tier of like you know, competitive experience in Apex, but I know enough based on what I see in scrims and just seeing you know, what everyone does.
Yeah, there was a particular moment in this last ALGS online tournament 6, the European scene. It was the end of game 4. One of the members of Gambit had won a clutch fight. It was the end game, and all 3 of the opposing team had gold res shields. They triple stacked inside of each other, and the Gambit member got killed, so he lost the placement point that he really earned. So yeah, it's caused a lot of argument in the community. A lot of people kind of wanted out of of just competitive. A lot of people think it should be left in. It's an interesting subject, but yeah.
Yeah.
As long as they balance it. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. What?
No. I was just gonna say I liked your point that they're listening. That
Yeah.
you had mentioned that definitely.
Yeah, I was literally gonna back up that sentiment.
Yeah, I saw, I think, a headline something about the devs pretty much saying that they're planning on changing the shield in some way. So I don't know what, but it's really nice to have the devs so involved in it.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with
Yeah.
us. This has been wonderful. I'm so grateful to, for you to spend your time chatting with us. This is amazing insights. I'm sure our listeners and watchers are going to love it. Let us know where we can find you on Twitch, Twitter, whatever socials. I know you make YouTube videos somehow in your busy schedule. You put that in as well.
Yeah, I stream over on Twitch at Dazz, D-A-Z-S. If you type up SoaR Dazs onto the YouTube algorithm, my videos will be the first one that pop up. Or my Twitter handle is DazBF.
Great.
Thank you again so much. We really appreciate having you.
Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
guys.
Good luck in your
for,
scrims
having me as a
today.
first. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully the
we'll-
duo took it.
No, I think they did. We placed top 6 in the first one. We were top 8 in the second. I think they placed top 9. So that's
Oh,
decent.
wow.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good. That's not half bad. Getting there.
Nice.
But thank you again, guys, for the time, and I look forward to chatting with you guys soon.
All right.
Yeah, appreciate
Thanks
it.
a lot.
All right.
That's our show for this week. Thank you so much. We will be back next week for week 5 of season 5 and to talk about the next hunt. I am Eric. This is Whitney. Whitney, you want to do your plug?
Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitch, Lumbago. Bay is BA3GO, and you can also find me streaming for the gamer on Facebook. I do that every Friday and Sunday. Been going live around 3, sometime between 2 and 4 usually, but you'll see me. I'll be there.
Are you still playing Maneater?
I finished Maneater, so I will
Oh,
probably
nice.
not do another Maneater stream, but it was very, very fun. What I did is I leveled up my character to like max what I could do, and then the rest of the game was so easy.
Nice. And Andrew?
Finn TTV, PHIN TTV, and I'm also streaming on the gamer. Usually Warzone, Valorant, Apex, you name it, I may stream it.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.